Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky Podcast. You haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are running through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we're up to episode 21 of season 5. It's called The Perfect Mate. Directed by Cliff Bole, teleplay goes to Ruben Leader and Michael Piller. Story goes to Renee Echeverria and Ruben Leder. It aired back on April 27, 1992. Sorry, I'm laughing. I think there's someone who has corrected me on my pronunciation of Renee's last name. I'm never going to get it. I apologize. In this episode, Captain Jean-Luc Picard develops feelings for a woman destined from childhood for an arranged marriage, which hopefully might end a war between two planets. Christian is here to talk about this one. Christian is from the subreddit Star Trek Viewing Party. You guys can head over and check that out. They're running through all of the episodes, just like this podcast, but in Reddit form. Anyway, after this little short break, me and Christian are going to come back. We're going to talk about The Perfect Mate.
This has been very educational, but I make it a policy never to open another man's gift.
I know my role in history, Commander. But it's going to be a long voyage.
It certainly is. We'll try to make you as comfortable as possible. Riker to bridge. If you need me, I'll be in holodeck 4.
Every now and then, a episode comes along that kind of pleasantly surprises you. That's certainly been the case of what I've experienced watching these TNG episodes all the way through. There's some that you clearly remember you hate, and there's a reason you hate them, because there's a reason you like, and you remember why you like them. And there's some that you never really watch all the time, and when you watch it again, you don't really understand why. I think that would have been the case for Sarek for me. And while I don't think The Perfect Mate is on the level of Sarek, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by The Perfect Mate. So, Christian, welcome back to the show. What did you think of The Perfect Mate?
I am for you, Wes of Podcast.
That's right.
I mean, I would agree with that. I don't think it's... I mean, it's not my favorite episode ever, but I definitely don't think it's as awful as either I remember it or as often the ratings say it is.
Yeah, I remember this one being a lot stupider than it actually is, but I think it's kind of got a good idea behind it. Like, or at least
I think there's a lot of questions that bear asking, both in regards to is this episode sexist, and what is the nature of being you? Yes,
it's. I think the episode actually has more things going for it that aren't directly being discussed by the episode, almost, in a way. Like, I think that they actually do a good job with the track that they pick here, outside of the fact that they put the Ferengi in for no goddamn reason whatsoever, and they're as obnoxious as...
Oh, there's a reason. It's just not a good one.
Yeah, well, the Ferengi are in this episode. If you've forgotten that the Ferengi are on this show, I can't blame you, because it's been forever. They are in this episode, and they act only as plot devices to drive everything that happens. Like,
they are purely a tool.
Why does he need to stand on barrels to scan the thing? Like, what?
Because this is the future. There are no ladders.
It's so stupid. He's standing on. Why do they manhandle the ambassador who they're trying to deal with? Like throw him through a table. None of that makes any sense whatsoever.
Well, what's worse is that he's expending all this effort to push these barrels close, but they're not that close. And then he pushes a second barrel up, which he expends a lot of effort doing, but then he doesn't use.
Right.
And then he stands on top of a second barrel. And there's only one reason to do that, is so that you can see a Ferengi fall.
Yes, and he interferes with the energy beam ropes or whatever holding the thing up. Yeah, the Ferengi, and they just get rid of them. Like 2 acts into the episode, they're like, well, the Ferengi are gone, so we're never going to have to think about that again.
Now, one of the Ferengi is Rom. Is this the second time he's been a Ferengi already?
Yes, I think so. And the other Ferengi is going to come back.
For 2.
Rascals. Yeah, he's over 2. He's the TNG is never really going to do the Ferengi well, and they sort of stick out as a sore thumb.
It's amazing how often they bring the Ferengi back, considering how bad the Ferengi are every time they do show up.
And they don't like it. Just it so obviously doesn't work. It's like you're just watching it, and you're going like, this is a
joke. This is a caricature. I can't take anything I'm seeing seriously.
Yeah, for a show that goes so out of its way to like respect all cultures and respect differences, the Ferengi stick out because they are just clearly a clown buffoon race who are like obsessed with profit, and that's the only thing that drives them. And it's such a weird, and it's funny that you're basically allowed to hate the Ferengi as a race.
Yes, is that racist?
Yes,
is it racist that everyone automatically hates dealing with Ferengi? But is it not racist because every single Ferengi we have ever seen acts the exact same way?
That's always my
thing. At what point
thing.
does it stop becoming a stereotype?
Right. Well, I guess it's the difference between, I've mentioned that before. It's sort of the difference between racism and stereotype. I guess it is racist, but it's not a stereotype because all the Ferengi are that stereotype. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yes.
it's not a stereotype to say that water is like clear or that water can become ice, because it just is. Like that's just.
But it's racist to say that I'm not going to let
any water. I'm not
water
gonna let any
ride on the same bus.
Right. Yes. Exactly. So there's a difference between racism and stereotypes. And Star Trek is interesting because there's no such thing as a. Well, DS9 will get into it. In TNG's universe, there is no such thing as a stereotype because all the races act the same way.
Yes.
Which I always think is fascinating. But anyway, The Perfect Mate is, as I was saying before, is sort of almost more interesting for what the episode is skirting the edges of than what it actually does. But I do think it's an interesting thing. So do you think that this is a sexist episode? That seems to be one of the major criticisms of it.
Well, first, I think that it's, interestingly, the closest we'll ever get to a X-Men TNG crossover.
Yep. Jean Grey.
They even say mutant in the episode.
I know, yeah, that made me laugh. Yeah,
is it a sexist episode? Well, I mean, that is a question that I wanted to ask because, and I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I want to say it. We see it as sexist because she is in an arranged marriage. Because almost entirely because she is this woman who will change herself to be whatever the man wants.
Yep.
And if we've learned anything from Greece, is that that's awful. However, there's two things to consider. One, and Picard makes this point, what one culture views as backward, another culture might view as normal. I think there are some practices which are unequivocally wrong, like human sacrifice, but others that are simply the way that a culture operates. Some cultures may believe very much in everyone can do everything. It doesn't matter between the genders. Every man and every woman can do all the exact same things. But other cultures might see it as, well, we have different roles, but those roles are still equally valuable.
Yep.
Is that latter culture sexist or misogynist? I mean, if everyone's happy and everyone believes that, oh, this is absolutely the right way to live, is that ultimately wrong?
Yeah.
And then, as a second thing, it depends on the nature of a telepathic, empathic metamorph. When she changes, is she changing who she is, or is she just acting like that? Because, what if I wanted a woman who was demure? Does that mean she is, like, not acting, but is some demure woman? What if I want someone who is aggressive? Is she acting aggressive, or does she become that?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I don't think the episode answers that question.
Yeah, I don't think it does. So, is it sexist? I think it depends on what you think the episode is trying to say. And honestly, I don't think if you see the episode as trying to say, "Oh, women should be like this person," then I think it might be a little bit sexist. But I don't think it's ultimately trying to say that. I think ultimately the episode, if anything, is expounding what she becomes in the end, which is Picard's idea of a woman who is someone who is independent, who is smart, who makes her own choices, who thinks about others before herself, who is ultimately a good person.
Right.
Honestly, I think in some ways it's more sexist towards men, than women.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of points that I guess you could argue. They do have a throwaway line that this is very common for men to happen.
Yes, and I've never heard that discussed, but I mean, we think that that's weird for women, but what about all the men who are out there super attracting women and changing themselves to be what women want?
Yeah, I guess it does come down to, I think it's an interesting point you raised about whether or not she is sort of playing I think that the episode is implying she's playing a role, especially at the end where she's like, well, I bonded with you, Picard, but I can sort of fake it till I make it with this other guy, like, yeah. I'm still an empath, so I'll be able to. Maybe
it's kind of, sorry about my mic, maybe it's kind of half and half, like she can, when she reads someone, she knows how to act to attract that person and instinctively acts like that, but she doesn't become that until she quote-unquote bonds.
Yeah.
So when she bonds with Picard, now she is what Picard wants. She's not just acting it.
Well, I think that what I was thinking was kind of a twisted thing about the episode potentially is that, the episode kind of implies that because she's bonding with Picard, she's becoming the person that she truly wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
Where all the evidence seems to imply that she's just doing what she does with everybody else to him.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, so when she becomes, sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's fine.
When she changes, is that an act? Is she? How much of her choice to bond with him was her choice, and how much of that was the influence from Picard?
Right. Yeah.
Picard wants her to make her own choice, but when she becomes that, isn't that just doing what he wants? How much of that is her, and how much of that is her doing what Picard wants her to do?
Right. Is this entire moral dilemma just because that's what Picard wants?
We don't know.
Right. That's and I don't think the episode ever brings that up, but it's something that's going on in the background, which is really sort of funny.
Yeah.
And Picard never seems to really realize it. He seems to be.
There's a lot of lack of realization going on here.
which I think is one of the more interesting aspects of it, because I like how what this episode is saying is sort of serves as a metaphor for like really like adolescent love almost in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want someone who's very into you and you get annoyed if they're paying attention to other guys and sort of like actively. I guess you could see it as like a breakup metaphor too, because Picard has a line where he's talking to Beverly about it, like it's painful to him to think about how she'll adapt to another person, which is basically
I'm not sure if I totally buy that.
By what?
I'm not sure if I totally buy Picard's attraction.
Why not?
I mean, Picard, at least my impression is that Picard genuinely has feelings for her.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I buy that. I think that she makes dudes turned on. So obviously Picard is fighting that.
Yep.
And I think that he's level-headed enough when he's not around her to realize what's going on. And I think he cares about her as a person and as a friend, but I mean, how can he fall in love with someone who he knows is changing to be exactly what he wants?
I guess that's the question about whether or not that would be disappointing. I think in some ways it is, because it's like I say, people could in Star Trek, they could go onto the holodeck and program themselves the perfect wife. She's not taken by any other man. She's a freak in bed with them. She loves them. She walks naked around the house all day, and she makes all the food. You could make it whatever stupid fantasy you wanted for a woman. You could make it in the holodeck. But ultimately, would that actually make you happy, or would it make you boring? Because you know they were built. It doesn't, whether it's an act or whether they truly believe it, that's one thing. I mean, it's a holodeck still, but would you really want someone who has no surprises, who is exactly what you want? Here's the problem with that, because if you started not wanting that, she has the ability to adapt.
Yeah.
To like there doesn't seem to be any sort of escape from her, because if you start getting tired of it, she will adapt and change.
She'll change.
So it's like that's why she's so perfect, and that's why I think that Picard falling for her kind of makes sense in this twisted way, because her game of like we have to do the honorable right thing is so up Picard's alley that she's actually doing the right thing for Picard through this entire episode, which is so weird.
That's weird.
And the episode,
trippy.
The episode doesn't really acknowledge it, but if you think about it that way, I think that's what the episode is, or that's like an interpretation that I think I would fully buy, which is really fascinating about it. But I think that I can understand. I think that if this was a real case, I think most people would have a hard time realizing that this is all. It also sort of brings up what is real. Like, how is this not real in a sense? Because the way the episode plays her is that she is sort of playing a game, sort of not. I think you could argue it either way.
I think it's both.
Yeah, where she's sort of biologically driven to, she has to bond with somebody, but she also is sort of aware of the game at the same time.
Yeah, although in some ways it's like, I made a note of it somewhere and I can't find it. She seems to not understand why he doesn't want to be so close to her.
She doesn't understand.
She doesn't. But she seems to be aware of virtually everything else. Why doesn't she get his reluctance to indulge in this? You make everyone around you want to bone you, and he doesn't just want to bone people. I said he doesn't just bone people because he's horny. Does she not understand that? You'd think that as an empath she would understand that. So I think in some ways she's aware, but I think in some ways her instinctual drive is so strong she can't even think straight.
Yeah, well,
that's the only thing I can come up with.
I think it comes back to
it's a bit weird.
The Picard thing of that's Picard's personality, like feeding into her. Yeah, which is it's just what we were talking about before. I think it's that his like ideal of like, this is what's right for humanity, this is what individuals should want, blah blah blah, is sort of feeding into that aspect of her, and it's causing this kind of confusion. Would be my sort of like, if I had to explain the situation, that's what would be going on in it. It's tough. I mean, I sort of buy their romance, if only just because the script wants us to accept that this is what this Kamala is built to do. So why wouldn't it work that way? If anything, the most impressive thing to me about the episode is Riker's resolve here.
Yes.
He steals some kisses on the side, but he manages to just get out of the room, which is kind of amazing.
And he bails as soon as she shows up later. It's like, I'll see you later.
It also has the thing, I burst out laughing, where the Riker is like, I'll be in holodeck 4.
It's the TNG's version of I'll be in my bunk.
that is hysterical, and it's the first time the show has admitted that that's a possibility. Oh,
it's straight up. He is straight up going to his heart-playing wank material in that holodeck, and I don't think he came out until he went to have that drink with Worf.
That was he was very relaxed in that.
You notice they don't shoot him from the waist down.
That was outstanding, and I applaud Riker's. It reminded me of the scene from Pulp Fiction where Travolta's talking to himself. He's just like, "You're gonna go home. You're gonna jerk off. You're not gonna do anything." That's exactly what Riker was doing that entire time. Which
is pretty impressive because immediately, 5 seconds into meeting her, he's giving her "fuck me" eyes.
Yes,
I mean it's a little bit unfair because she's giving everyone "fuck me" eyes.
Yep,
but.
Where did they
It's very fast.
Where did they pick up those minors from?
Say it in the opening message when he's talking, either in his log or to. I'm sorry, I'm talking real loud. In his log, or when he's talking to the ambassador that they had to stop to pick up some miners. He's like, sorry for the delay. We had to pick up some stranded miners.
Oh, okay. I thought that was way out of the blue.
Miners made up entirely of old discarded makeup from Cardassians and other aliens of the week that they found.
Sort of Halloween costume
clearly.
pig noses. Yeah,
absolutely.
It was just such a weird scene, mostly because you never really see the sort of like you never see that kind of civilization on the Enterprise in mass.
No.
Like that's sort of, they're supposed to just be like blue collar bar drinking guys.
Yes.
They're miners or whatever. But
if there's nothing that's one of the things that definitely Star Trek loves colonists and miners.
Yes,
every other planet is being colonized or is being mined.
Even though you'd imagine you could just transport the mining materials out of the ground. You would think you could do that, but
maybe Luddite miners.
Yeah, maybe.
I actually have a lot to say about that scene, and I think that's a problem that's indicative of kind of the sexist attitude of the episode. Is
the bar scene?
Yes, and I think it's kind of demonstrates it. Is first off, Data is an idiot. Why did he think that taking her to 10 Forward, where people are drinking alcohol, synthahol or not, is a good idea?
Right, yeah.
I don't know. There's absolutely... And furthermore, there's nothing nuanced about his performance. He's played like an idiot for laughs, and I don't think it's very good. They're trying to be funny, but it just does not come off as funny. And I think this is the problem. I know that there's a sci-fi explanation for, she's emitting pheromones, she can read what people want, she instantly becomes what people want, she's super attractive. I mean, I get that, but are we going to completely discount self-control? Because obviously, even a horn dog like Riker can resist it. Why can't anyone else?
Well,
and I think it sends...
Picard has a line about the crew can do it, but not these like civilians that are on the ship.
I suppose, but I still think it sends this message of, and I swear to God, I'm not going to talk about rape culture, but I think it sends this bad message of, well, boys will be boys. You put a hot woman and some pheromones in front of their face, and they can't control themselves. I mean, she's such a danger to the rest of the crew. He's gonna have to lock her up, and I think that regardless of whether or not we see, I mean, sure, the crew might be able to handle it, but the fact that we saw anyone reacting that way to her, I think comes across as kind of negative towards men. And I think that's not it. I don't think that's an attitude that we should be, and I think that's an attitude that I don't think, I mean, I understand it, but it just makes me uncomfortable. It's like, come on, you can show attraction without being borderline lewd.
Well, I think that the only weird scene is just the miners. And I guess they're written that way. I mean, the problem with that line of thought is that she gives back just as good as she gets. So it's not like she's being harassed, because her entire sort of way of being is to feed that energy and to sort of like respond to it. So I think it's tough to say that it's not just that men can't control themselves. It's because it's not that she is not interested in them and that they can't stop themselves from going after her. It's that her whole state of being is to cause that to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it just made me uncomfortable to see it. Because even with Riker, Riker gets out of there, but I mean, is it that? I don't know.
It's tough because I think it's just sort of the coarseness of the miners scene. And I mean, it's almost sort of weird that Riker leaves, it's because it's totally, Riker has stayed in that room with many other female characters who weren't specifically designed for that. And I guess he's got a little bit of motivation of he needs to get these peace talks need to happen or whatever. But it's, I think it's fascinating because it's not, I guess it all comes down to whether or not she's in total control of this. Although at that point, I guess you start arguing about free will and everything and determinism and whether or not anybody is in actual control about what they're doing. So I think it's fascinating. I don't think the episode is particularly sexist, mostly because she.
I don't think it's overtly.
No, I don't.
Anything, but I think that it's I think that definitely if you're going to talk about possible sexism towards women, I think that there's definitely a case to be made for an equal case for men. It's not like, and it's not like they're competing, but I think you need to see both possible problems with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get a bunch of angry mail.
No one's angry. It's the, I mean, if you had switched it with a male, right? The storyline definitely
and not
changes.
changed anything. That would have been pretty progressive.
Well, I mean, the other criticism people have is that why does she only attract males? Why doesn't it sort of work for females as well?
Because there's no real female characters on this show.
Well, yeah, and there's certainly no gay female characters. So that would be
that would have been very progressive.
I mean,
so it's almost kind of. I think that actually would have been very interesting to see.
I would have liked if they had just done like the women character. I don't think Troy is in this episode at all.
I think she in the first.
No, she's in the first.
Not.
She's in First Duty in the opening scene, but I don't think she's in this one at all.
You're right.
If we'd seen like the women sort of being like charmed by her, maybe not sexually drawn to her, but just being like, wow, what a great. If this ability worked beyond just being sexy for people, if you were just like, if everyone just thought you were like the cat's pajamas, if you were just like, wow, what a great person like this, because that would kind of, that's kind of what she's doing. She is favorably making everyone think of her. And for men, it's like a very sexual attraction. So I would have appreciated a scene where just like, Beverly Crusher or whatever is just like, wow, like what a great, I see what everyone sees in this person. Like what a fantastic individual she is.
And I think that's one thing also is I kind of wish that they had done more with not just the sexual aspect. I know they're trying to push it, and in some ways that's good because Star Trek is, at least with TNG, has tried to not come across as I don't know what's the word.
TNG.
They're willing to talk about sex and not act like it's a taboo subject, and that I'm totally applaud them for. I think that anytime anytime a character like apologizes for the sexuality, I don't think that's a good thing. You should be able to be confident in that and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of it is, and again, I wrote a lot of notes, but I feel like it's sometimes she always assumes she only takes one tack for attracting men.
Yep.
And
yeah. Well,
yeah,
I guess the counter. I mean, the counter would be she takes a different tack with Picard, and it works.
Yeah, which I like that aspect of it absolutely.
Yeah. It's. I mean, well, let's talk about the ending because I think it's a very solid ending.
I concur. I liked that turn.
Yes, and I think that the previous episode we did together was the First Duty, which I think had a fine ending, but I was not emotionally connecting with it. I really emotionally connect with this ending here because it fits the character Picard. He's doing the noble thing. She's doing the noble thing, sort of doing to get whatever this peace treaty is. She's going to go off with this guy who, to the script's credit, he's not horrible. He's just kind of a douchebag. He's not a horrible person.
Douchebag.
You wish that he wasn't.
I wish that they would not have made it so obvious that, oh my gosh, it's the stereotype for arranged marriages in this kind of media where the beautiful woman is going to marry an asshole.
Yes.
And if that was the way arranged marriage always worked, it would not have lasted. But I'd like to see maybe he's not the greatest person, but not make him quite so much of he's instantly dislikable.
Well, I mean,
the way he holds his head to the way he talks about them, everything is immediately.
I think he's
dislikable.
But he's not a bad person, I guess would be the way. Like he sort of doesn't.
Well, they play him that way, and he doesn't care about her. He cares about the trade negotiations. They're playing him off like he's not a great person.
I guess I don't know. I think that I don't think I get the impression that he's a bad person. He's interested in other things, and he's sort of above the tradition in his mind. Like,
yeah.
he's not actively looking down on this other race. He's just kind of like, oh, our species doesn't even really like to do these traditions. We'd get all the paperwork. They seem more official than the other group does.
If he's not actively if he's not like explicitly looking down on them, he's doing everything but.
Sure.
I mean, he's skirting the line about as close as you can get, and Picard clearly doesn't like him because Picard thinks the world of Kamala, and of course he's like, oh, Kamala, whatever. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, what'd you think of the ending in terms of just how it all wrapped up? And I guess I'll preface that by there was a note on Memory Alpha. Originally, they wanted Picard have like a daydream where he breaks up the wedding.
Yes.
And Rick Berman shot it down. I think I agree with not doing that. It doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah, that's a bit much. I think in a lot of ways it's the best possible ending. Because if she doesn't go through with it, the war continues, and apparently it's a very bad war. And because she is bonding with Picard and taking on Picard's traits, which are the traits that he wants in a woman, she's becoming this noble, independent woman. And I think, in the end, she is doing it absolutely of her own free will, because she realizes that her sacrifice is worth it for the sake of both her people and her relatives,
her husband's,
her husband's people, and she can fake it enough that, I mean, he won't know the difference. She'll know, and I think ultimately it's there's something profoundly sad in her story.
Yeah,
she finally finds out what independence is, and I mean, I think she could, if she wanted to say no, I think she could have. I think Picard would have allowed her like asylum, or whatever. But I think that absolutely she chooses to go back there, and I think if the show is sending a message about women, I think ultimately that's the message that you want to pull out, which is you want to be independent. Sometimes you have to make a choice that is a sacrifice, and not. I think it would be a mistake to say that it's talking anything about arranged marriage specifically. But I think just the idea of she has her independence now, and she chooses this for her people.
Yes. Yeah, I think that it was a smart decision to have something going on in the background besides just the arranged marriage aspect. Like the sacrifice that she's doing actually has impact, and it's I think she makes the correct. I think there's an argument she makes the correct ethical choice. It's not like she makes the wrong decision.
I think so.
So I think that the show did a really good job of getting around that. At the same time, it's also very tragic for both characters. Even though I don't think that they really share a scene that is as touching as it should have been, in a way. Like they don't really. I think they have okay chemistry, Stewart and Jansen, but I don't know if it really knocks me off my feet. But I think that the show wraps it up really cleverly, and it pulls on your heartstrings. It makes you think, and Picard's made the sacrifice. She's made a sacrifice. Everyone but Aldrich is kind of aware of a sacrifice, and that's kind of a neat little ending.
Yeah. I am also glad that they did not have a kiss.
Yes, yeah.
I think that would have subverted kind of Picard's nature and character.
Yeah. No,
I think that was a positive choice.
I'd agree.
Despite my problems, I think ultimately the ending was surprisingly strong.
Yeah.
For how paint by numbers some of the plot is earlier, because of course the Ferengi are there, of course the ambassador will be disabled, of course Picard is not going to be able to keep himself away from her. Yeah,
tonally, I wish they hadn't gone for so much comedy in it. I don't know if it needed that.
No, I think they should have spent a lot more time addressing this ring of what is real life.
Right. What is this just fantasy, as Queen would say? Yeah. Interesting. I like this episode. I think it's kind of fascinating. With that, I'm going to play a clip. We're going to come back. We're going to give our final thoughts and ratings for The Perfect Mate.
Actually, it's all your fault.
Mine?
You insisted that I look into her situation.
The metamorph?
The metamorph. Kamala. I spent quite a lot of time with her in the past few days. And you're right about several things, Beverly. Her entire existence has been orchestrated for this moment, and she intends to go through with it. To help her people end the war.
And you're saying there's nothing you can do about it?
It isn't that simple. I barely know who she is, and who she is changes the moment the next man comes into the room. And I find myself hoping that the next man won't come in.
You know, it's kind of neat. It's an episode that I think has a lot going on that you could discuss about it. I think that we've certainly, the interesting aspect to me that it doesn't touch on is really what is there free will involved here for basically anybody? And is that wrong? Is that right? If at the end when she makes this decision after being imprinted by Picard, you know, we've just argued that it's her own decision, but is it her own decision because she's being influenced by Picard? You know what I mean? Like at what point does that stop mattering to anything?
Like the chicken and the egg.
Right. Yeah. Which came first? But I'm going to give this one. This is kind of a surprise to me. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's really interesting. I don't think it's a fantastic super episode. I think it does have some definite problems, but I think it's interesting enough to the point where I could feel good giving it a 4 and actually showing it to somebody and not being like, oh, this is a silly episode. What'd you think? What are you going to give it?
Despite some problems with it and some questionable messages, I don't think the message of, oh my gosh, this episode is sexist is a valid criticism. I think it has a very strong and very tragic ending, and I think that a lot of stories, especially in Star Trek, are at their best when you have a bit of tragedy mixed in with the episode. You want that kind of emotional response, and I felt more emotionally invested in this than a lot of other episodes, certainly than any of these crap episodes that I've seen. I would not. I don't think I'm going to give it a 3, but it's a strong 3. Like I usually like to give things, just to explain, like I like to give things on a 10 scale, 1 to 10.
Sure.
So for me, like a 3 would be either a 5 or a 6. Yeah. So I would give this one if on like a 10 scale, I would give it a 6. So I definitely think it's above average. I would not put it as a 4 because I didn't enjoy it that much.
Sure.
The ending, before it gets into these real interesting questions, I think the beginning is very... Sorry, not the ending. The beginning is kind of weak.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But it's absolutely a strong 3, a 3.5 if you want to say it. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that people should... I mean, it gave us something to talk about. I mean, we could spend 30 minutes making... I don't think we could spend 30 minutes making jokes about it.
No, that's true. I mean, it's... For the episode we did previously, which is First Duty... This one
less to talk about there.
I think that, you know, on a fundamental level, that one's First Duty is probably a better like constructed episode. Mm-hmm. I think this one is just more interesting than the First Duty is, and I think that's sort of the turning point for me. That's why I would turn it into a 4. But anyway, guys, it's been fascinating. It's been a good conversation. It's an interesting episode. It's one of my surprise. I'll have to remember this. If I don't remember this, people remind me that this is. End of season kind of these surprise episodes so far at this point. If you're on YouTube and you're watching this, a like and a comment's appreciated. If you're on iTunes, rating and review helps get the show out there. I'll read some reviews if they get put up. Thank you for everyone who does comments and leaves feedback. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah. Every morning is interesting to wake up and to see what people think about these things.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I plug my sub?
Yeah, go ahead.
And if any of you guys out there want to... have an additional forum for discussing episodes like this with other Star Trek fans, there is a sub on Reddit. It's called Star Trek Viewing Party. We've been following along with TNG. I think we're a little bit ahead of this podcast right now.
You are. I fell off. I was keeping pace for a little while, and then
I was very upset because I listened to this podcast on my way to school and work, and whenever I don't have one, I'm very upset. So
I've been doing better recently. I must
have. Yes, you have.
I think
a weird
honestly, stretch.
And not just because I'm on this episode talking to you, but I really think that this is right now my favorite Star Trek podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
They're, as opposed to something like Mission Log, which is sometimes they can be up their own ass about Star Trek, I think that this takes a very critical look at things. I don't agree with everything, and the reason I asked to be back on the show again is because I kept yelling at my radio saying, no, I want to talk to you about this. But I think that I think this is a very well done podcast, and I think that absolutely people should check it out. It is not as popular as it deserves to be. I think you put together a very quality piece of work.
Checks in the mail. This has been wonderful. No, thank you very much.
Can make
I think
the check payable too. No, seriously. Like I think this is the kind of thing that I really enjoy.
You know, I listened to a couple Star Trek podcasts, and I think that there's certainly doing this is like I think I could do a podcast on what kind of podcasting works. Not that I think that this one is an example of what works, but I've noticed that there are certain things that drive me crazy, and I listen to Mission Log.
Like what?
The one thing about Mission Log I would change is it must take them so long to write the recaps, and I skip every single recap that they do about the episode.
The recaps are very detailed, yes.
It's like 15 minutes, but they're like they obviously write it out and they go through painstaking detail, and I skip it every single time
because they watch the episodes like 3 or 4 times in a row, and I would hate Star Trek.
It's fascinating.
If I had watched that much.
I try to do each episode twice, and there are some episodes that really change when you watch them a second time. Obviously, there'd be ones that are like built on a mystery premise or something, and that changes it. But there are other ones where you watch it the first time, you're like, wow, that was great. And you watch it again, you go, actually, there was a lot of problems with what I just saw. I was mesmerized by something, the shine of it or something like that. But thank you for your kind words, guys. Check out Star Trek Viewing Party. It's a great subreddit. I have not commented recently because I'm a little bit behind, but it does have a dedicated following at this point of people who leave a lot of good feedback about the episodes. I think you guys are up to halfway through season 6, or at least at the end.
We're
of season 6.
closing on the end of season 6 now.
Yeah. So season 7 will be up, and then you guys are going to do Deep Space Nine after that. Yeah.
Are you planning on doing anything for DS9?
I will. I'll have to. Well, I can't say I will. I would like to. I need to take a break.
Yes.
Basically. So, but hopefully I would pick it up. I do have a kid on the way. So
really? Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Podcasting news. But yeah, that'll be changing things. So I would just like to finish this up before that happens and then see what goes from there. But Christian, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Guys, I'll be back with, I forget what is after this. I think it's the next phase, right? The Ro Laren, maybe, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll edit it in post.
Imaginary Friend is next.
Oh, Imaginary Friend. Never mind. Skip that, everybody. I'll go to the next one. Yeah, I'll be back in a couple days with Imaginary Friend. So see you then.